What do you do when you know somebody is saying something that you can refute and you know that they're walking down a path that they're not going to like, but they always seem to slip away? How do you make sure that they stay on that path and that you are able to deliver that killing blow, that strong argument that you know should be coming? Let's talk about that in today's technique breakdown.
Mr. Anderson.
Hi, my name is Mr. Anderson, and I am mean to people on the internet. I try and be polite about it, though. I just tend to ask difficult questions and insist on the answers. You can think of my channel as kind of like a self-defense course for getting into fights on the internet. We're going to talk a lot about debate techniques, and we do a lot of debate analysis, and you'll also see a bunch of my own debates on here where I put some of the things that I'm talking about into practice. Today, we're going to be looking at a debate review that I did recently with Grayson from Base Theory, and we're going to talk in particular about a technique that I call crossing the T. So we're going to pick the discussion up from a point where I had just demonstrated some of the technique that I would use when I am laying the groundwork with respect to any kind of particular point. Then we're going to get into a discussion about how to make a particular point when somebody says something or goes down a line that you know and you can identify is going to be a good place for you.
Of that.
But do you see? Do you see how? Do you see how when I did it that way, as opposed to just saying that stuff, that it's harder to ignore because I'm feeding it to you piece by piece, right?
That is one of the things that I really admire about your debating style is that you tend to lead your opponents down your line of questioning or lead them where you want them. Whereas I feel like my style is more so, again, because I think maybe I'm just entertained or fascinated with how the inner machinations of their heads work with these people. I tend to try to drive right to the point of what I see as the part where they leave the train of reality.
Yeah.
And I try to present like, well, here's the evidence that
That's
directly refutes you. How do you respond to this? And to me, I don't know how they're going to respond. I'm not leading them anywhere. I'm curious because I'm like, how could you possibly respond to this? Because it's such a defeater to your point. And so I just try to rush right to that point and just present it to them and just hear how they respond and then just go from there.
then your brain explodes, right?
Yes.
That's what the problem is that yes, that's exactly what I see you doing in this debate over and over and over again, where you're like, no, that's wrong, and I know why it's wrong, and I'm going to tell you right now, right? And what I'm saying is that, like, so all of your instincts and everything that you're doing in this debate is correct right up until that moment, right? And it's at that moment that I'm suggesting that you could do something slightly different, and that is, you see the point, you know where they're going to go, you know you know where they're going to either run into a brick wall, turn left and agree to you, or agree with you rather, or turn right and look faintly ridiculous, right? You know there's only three options, right? And so it doesn't help if how fast you go to towards the brick wall doesn't help. The point is that you have to make sure that they don't leave that path, right? And so once you've identified, all right, we're I see it, I see that T intersection, right? Now you slow down, and that's where you flip into using some of these techniques that I'm talking about, right? So you can do your regular style for like 90% of your debate, and then just in that moment you go, all right, so and this is like, here's some phraseology for you to use. I just want to understand what you're telling me. You're telling me that this, right? Okay. And you'll also agree that this, right? And so then you know what they're going to say, you know what their line of logic is, and you know why it is that that's going to run into that brick wall or turn left or turn right. And so then you just slow down and you make sure that you get all of the little pieces along the way. And the reason for that is that what ends up happening when you rush to the wall is that there's like oh, well, that's not what I meant. When you don't, you know damn well that's what they meant, right? Oh, no. Like soon as they see it, right? So you see it first. So you're at an advantageous position because you know that they're full of baloney and that they're going to try and weasel out of it. So now, first thing you do is you start to walk them down that path, is you got to cut off all the little side, channels. And you're not telling me that blah, 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 right? No, of course not. Good. And you're not saying this, right? No, of course not. Good. And it's all of the weaker arguments that they probably would retreat to because they figure they've got their strong argument, down, and they don't realize that no, there's a bigger problem with your strong argument, but let's get rid of all your weak ones first, right? Then at the end, now here's a problem with your strong argument. Oh, well, and then now they realize, oh no, right? All of my escape hatches have been nailed shut by my own hand, right? And now I have to confront the contradiction. Does that make sense?
So I had this quantum mechanics professor who was this Soviet guy who was absolutely like dry humor, hilarious. But whenever you'd ask him a question that was like subtle or tricky or something, he'd say, "This question is lawyerish." And this reminds me, these questions are lawyerish questions, but I think that he meant it in a negative way, but I think that this is a very positive application of lawyerishness, and that I probably should have applied more lawyerishness in this interaction. Like as soon as I started getting frustrated that we were not moving to the actual topic of the debate, I think that the gears should have switched and I should have started getting small concessions that lead up to something actually relevant to the topic that we could then chew on. Like you're saying, like I should have led Donnie down the road that I want to go rather than just vocally
following him and hoping he would go there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the theory of, the T intersection approach. Now let's watch and see if Grayson can put it into practice. So first, here's a clip from his debate.
Do you agree that Africans have been subjected historically to faster mutation rates for a number of reasons?
Why would that be the case?
Well, firstly, being environmentally related. I've got papers here showing that environments can result in a faster mutation rate. And Africans are historically where? Closer to the equator.
But you also say Neanderthals have a higher mutation rate and they're not near the equator. So
well, it doesn't there's different environmental factors. Neanderthals lived in harsh ice age related conditions where the clouds would block vitamin D from getting in. As a matter of fact, when they sequenced the Neanderthal genomes, they found massive rungs of homozygosity, showing that they actually showed a lot of degenerated genes and alleles in Neanderthal genetics. But yeah, their environments, they're ice age. So are you saying that ice age related conditions are not as bad as being close to the equator? I mean, they're both bad environments, but they're different. Doesn't mean that they're not bad, though. I don't know. What's your point there? Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is that mutation rates are not significantly different based on where you live. Like, I mean, unless you're living next to a nuclear reactor or something, like your mutation rate is going to be similar for most of the human population. Like, you're not going to have higher mutation rates in Africa. You're not going to have higher mutation rates in Northern Europe. Okay, like it's going to be very similar mutation rates. Okay, we don't observe. I mean, show me a paper that says Africans have higher mutation rates in their genomes. You've got one paper that they've got one single gene that has higher mutation rates. That, that doesn't prove jack.
Okay, so I guess this brings us back to our original debate, where you can literally manifest worldwide genetic variation on a phylogenetic tree, and you have differing size branches indicating.
And now Grace is going to get a chance to see whether or not he can put that theory into practice.
Okay. So, That's a good example where like you made a really great point. You had like this zinger about like, oh well, you'd agree like that the people who are living closer to the equator, they have higher mutation rates, and you're like, you say Neanderthals had higher mutation rates and they're not close to the equator. And he's like, well, blah, 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 right? And then he's like, what do you mean? And then you explained what you meant, right? And you gave your argument. I want you to, like, let's do this. I'm going to be Donnie this time, okay? And I'm going to be a turd about it too.
All right.
And I want you.
Do I get to be Grayson?
You get to be Grayson. I want you to get that stuff that you just said out of me by asking questions. Right? So say the same thing, make the same points, but I want you to try and do it as questions, right? And the format that I like to use typically, you don't have to do this, but to start with, I think you should try it, is instead of just saying the things, say a little piece of it and then ask me if I agree. Or put it, say, I put it to you, or isn't that correct? Isn't this true? Blah, 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 right? Right? And get the little pieces out of me so that I'm saying those things. And it's now, once you get to the end, you've made your point, but now I've kind of agreed to it. It's going to be a lot harder for me to be like, no. It's just like, well, you just said yes, 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 a whole bunch of times, a whole bunch of little things that add up to one big thing.
Okay. Well, first of all, Donnie, good to see you. You're looking much better than normal. I don't know if you've changed your haircut or what, but
you look
I want to ask you something.
The same level of handsomeness as usual.
So, you think that mutation rates are higher at the equator, correct?
Right. I mean, you just look at like skin cancer. You get more skin cancer at the equator. Skin cancer is a mutation of like the genes. That's why people have darker skin at the equator.
I didn't ask you about skin cancer, Donnie. I just asked you about mutation rates. Now you will.
Well, yeah, but skin cancer has to do with mutations. Grayson, skin cancer has to do.
Donnie, hold on. Let me ask you this question. Do you also agree that people live on the equator in South America?
Yes.
Okay, and you would agree that on the phylogenetic tree that you showed earlier, that the native South Americans actually have some of the least amount of mutations in their genomes. They're some of the most homozygous populations, right?
Yeah, but that's because of the founder effect, because you're failing to account for the fact that those people have only arrived in South America relatively recently. And so it doesn't have to do, like, it also has to do with the fact that, like, so in number two, there's faster mutation rates.
I didn't ask about number two, Donnie. Hold on. Because in your paradigm, true or false, there would also be a founder effect in Africa, because you don't think that humans originated in Africa. You think that they spread there in the same way that they spread to South America.
Yeah, but there are a number of different factors that you have to consider here, right? So there's the faster mutation rates. There's selective sweeps that could be going on. There is
but hold on, Donnie, you said that the
faster
mutation rates was due to living at the equator, but in South America they also live in the equator, but they don't have those fast mutation rates.
Right. Well, like I told you, there's a number of factors. There's a number of factors involved, so you can't just look at one thing.
So earlier when you said that it was because of the environment, that there were more factors, and that was not the explanatory factor for this data.
It's one of the explanatory factors.
Okay, so it's multivariate, but the original explanation was insufficient. Gotcha.
You see how that played out differently?
Yeah.
And like, and I'm twisting and turning it.
I was asking the questions. In the clip you played, I noticed that Donnie was asking me the lawyerish questions. I don't know how that happened, but at some point in that debate, Donnie starts asking me the answers, trying to get concessions out of me. I don't know how that happened, but wow.
So look, like sometimes you'll be able to just drive the bus, right? Like I got, there's a combination of being lucky and good, like, because like, to some degree, when I seize control, like I'm doing that on purpose and I know what I'm doing and I'm not letting go, right? But also, to some degree, sometimes some of my opponents let me do that because they don't know how to take it back, right? Donnie does. And so even if you look at, for example, my debate with him about something else to do with genetics, what was it?
Genetic entropy?
No, not the genetic entropy one, because that one wasn't really a questioning style debate. It was the round 2 that I had with him that had to do with something else. I can't remember, something to do with genetics. But you'll find that what happens is that we trade, right? And so, like, to be fair to your opponent, and not look like a jerk, and look almost like a Darth Dawkins kind of a thing, where it's like, well, you just like to ask questions, you don't give the answers. You have to be willing to trade. You have to be willing to say, like, okay, well, you ask me questions for a while, and then that's going to give me kind of like the moral authority to say, no, I insist, answer my question. I answered plenty of yours, right? So it's not bad to give that other person the initiative for a time, but you do need to know how to take it back, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when they're not going to give it willingly, right? And, a lot of times the answer is that you have to be a little bit rude, and me, I'm a big proponent for, like, be polite, be cordial, but, like, sometimes, look, if you're dodging, and one like very common dodge is that people will be like, well, I'm going to ask another question, or I want to ask another. No, you're going to answer this one. Like, I asked you first, it's my turn, answer this line of questions, right? And another and another and another till I get my answer, right? Mm-hmm. But that was good. Like, your line of questioning there was good, and I saw you thinking on your feet there, and you twisted it to the South America thing, which I don't know if you had prepared, but it seemed like you came up with on the spot.
Yeah, as we were listening to the clip, I was just, I wished that I had brought up other equatorial regions. So you gave me the opportunity to do that with your foe, Donnie.
Sure, but, like, the point is that you create those little opportunities for yourself, and then you kind of seize on them, and you're going to come up with good stuff on the fly, and some of it'll be prepared, and some of it'll be, just kind of from your head, and that's kind of how you do it. And you can see how, like, I don't know if you feel like that's like that's something that will be effective, but it's certainly something you can try out.
So there you go, guys. That's the T intersection technique with respect to cross-examination, or questioning in general. And Grayson was a excellent student and very capable person who was able to immediately put that into practice, which is very impressive. Usually takes a little bit more practice than Grayson had in order to get that good, but you know what? Everybody has to start somewhere, and I'm sure that everybody else is going to get there too. So until next time, keep after them. Talk to you later, guys.